Hello, everybody, and welcome to the IC Topic Chats for today. It is Thursday, August 25th, 2022, and we are joined by Lauren McClain and some other folks. But Lauren asked a question in the e-group, the ICTIG e-group through the American Evaluation Association about what are some things you should be doing when you're first starting first getting introduced to a client, particularly when you're writing a proposal. Should you charge them for it? Should you set up an MOU? What are some things you need to be concerned about? And there was a lot of feedback on that question, and I thought, well, this would be a great idea for the IC topic chat. And so Lauren and some of the folks got together with me, and we recorded a session, and that was with Lauren and Kurt Stuke, myself, and Melanie Wallach. And so we recorded that session on Monday, and I'm going to play it for you here to get things kicked off, and I think you'll hear me give another introduction. I'm going to caution, we were doing this and I was sharing my notes for the first couple minutes, so you're going to see you're going to be watching it, but you're going to basically just be looking at my notes, and then eventually I realized I had the notes shared, so I'm going to turn that off. You'll see I'll turn it off about 3 minutes into the recording, but let me go ahead and get that recording going, and then after that I'll ask some more questions of Lauren and see if she has any other reflections, and Kurt, who is also in that session. And then I'll stop the recording for the session, and we will continue to chat and think and reflect and think what we have to say. So let me get that recording going. Welcome, everybody. This is a special panel chat for the independent consulting topic chat, the IT topic chats that we do every Thursday. We are recording this ahead of time so that we could get the benefit of a couple of people who may or may not be able to make it to our session on today. I guess it'll be today, but today is Monday for us, and we're recording this for next Thursday. So what I want to do is start off by introducing the topic. We're going to be talking about pre-grant work and some of the things that you may want to think about as you're initiating a relationship with a new client and developing a proposal. And then I'd also like to go around and have everybody introduce themselves who's part of this panel today. So I'm gonna go first. Kurt, you go next. Lauren, you go after that, and then Melanie, you go after that. So I'm Matt Feldman. I'm a program evaluator based in Edwardsville, Illinois, and I own Goshen Education Consulting. And if you're here on this IC topic chat, you've probably heard from me before, so I'll keep it short. Go ahead, Lauren. Go ahead, Kurt.
I am Kurt Stuke. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. I have a PhD in educational psychology and have a small business doing education evaluations. And I've been a federal employee in an education training research grant or function, and then have been on the private side since 2000, working for other people, and then just about 10 years ago started my own company. And so I've been doing program evaluations formally for a decade, but my entire career has been in education, training, research, and development. Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren McClain. I am an owner, partner in Grantably LLC, a grant evaluation firm that I started with two of my colleagues. And we're the newbies in the room. We've been just at this a little bit over a year, and we've had some good success in this first year, but still have a lot to learn. So we are also all still in academia. We're all associate professors or some other title depending on our location, but and our university structure. But we've all been doing evaluation work and research for many years, but just in this form more recently. So really excited to be part of this panel today.
Hello, I'm Melanie Wallach. I'm from Speck Associates. We are located in Southfield, Michigan, which is a metropolitan Detroit area. We have been doing evaluations for more than 40 years. In 2008, we transformed ourselves from a for-profit consulting firm into a nonprofit. And so, thank you for inviting me.
Such a fascinating, that's a whole other conversation to have there, Melanie.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
for sure.
So, yeah, I don't want to go off topic already, but boy, that's a piece of your information I didn't know. So, Lauren, we're here because you initially put out an email to the e-group, to the effectively the listserv, to the AEA ICTIG listserv. So why don't you discuss a little bit about what you were asking and what are some things that you found, and then we'll start that as a way to kind of start the conversation.
Yeah, so like I said, we're just sort of getting started here in this last year or so, and what we were thinking about is, as we're working with new clients, is that, the way that we sort of went into those new relationships is that we would do all of that pre-grant work basically for free. And then, sort of build that maybe back into the cost that would be our fee as part of the funded work if they ultimately get funded. Of course, there's a little bit of a risk there, though, right? Because not every grant gets funded. And so then that may be time that we don't, get compensated for. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were on the right track in our thinking, that that is a good way to build client relationships, even though it's a little bit of a risk for us. I just wanted to see if that was sort of standard practice. And so that was the question that I put out to the group, and if anyone had any ideas. And I think everyone who responded pretty much said, yeah, with the nature of this work, that's sort of how we do it as well. But people also put out some really good ideas, like Melanie responded, and Kurt and Matt, all three of you responded with some good ideas in terms of maybe having an MOU or some other type of written agreement. What we have done is just in the grant itself, in that evaluation piece, so that all, evaluation work will be done by Grantedly LLC. But we, that may not be enough. We might need something a little bit more solid than that. And so that was really the basis of the question and sort of what I've got out of our conversation. And so I look forward to, hearing what others have to say about what they've done, what's worked, what hasn't, what, challenges people might have come up against. I know you have another topic chat, Matt, on MOUs, so we'll definitely be checking that out as well. And so I encourage others to go look at that as well. But that's sort of where we came at with this discussion.
So let's take a step back. Now, I remember when I was working as a director of institutional research, and I was in this big power meeting of presidents and vice presidents, and the president goes, "We need an MOU with that group," and I go, I honestly said, "What's an MOU?" Like that was some weird acronym. So just to point out what an MOU is, it's a memorandum of understanding. It's effectively like a pseudo contract. It may not go to the level of true contracting language. It's got all the provisions in a contract, but it's effectively a pseudo contract or a pre-contract to a contract. That's the way I've learned about it. So Melanie, I know you have some experience with MOUs. How do you use MOUs with pre-grant work?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I'll take a step further back, if I could, just for a second. It is not without controversy whether or not evaluators should be naming themselves in a grant proposal, by the way, or be doing that grant work, as it might constitute a conflict of interest, or whether or not you can actually be an objective evaluator. I mean, I obviously fall on the other side of the argument, but that argument has been made in the past that it's not a good idea to do it, period. On the flip side, we think it is a good idea because people can write evaluation plans that are total messes and put evaluation budgets in that are totally out of line with what the work expected is. So we like to be involved in the proposal writing. And as what we do, if it's, this is mostly for people we've never worked with before. I don't know, well, we should probably be more conscientious about all of the times that we write, but we've got as you grow your business, you will have a series of repeat customers. We have some that, we worked for Girl Scouts of the USA for 17 years. So as we start, trusting each other more, we don't do these letters of agreement, but ours is simply a letter, sometimes an email that basically says, we're happy to be writing this evaluation plan for your grant XXX for the, blah, blah, blah. And we understand that we are writing this for no fee. We're not charging you a fee for the writing of the proposal, and in return, you will guarantee to us that if this grant is funded, that we will be sole source the contract, that you'll contract with our organization to do the evaluation as it is written in the proposal and for the budget that's in the proposal. That's basically how we do it. And we make sure that the person who signs that actually has the authority to pull that off. So it typically should be at least the PI on a grant. And sometimes, like in some universities, you know, it has to go to the director of research, or it has to even go up further in order to get that letter signed, but we kind of insist on doing it. We have had on occasion people deciding to pay us for the plan. We say that if you choose someone else, because it's always an option, right, that you agree to pay us for the time that we spent writing, which is approximately X number of dollars. And one occasion, people took our plan, used it, but hired somebody else, i.e. graduate students, at a much cheaper budget, and they did pay us the fee for writing. So either
I'd
way.
love to hear that story. I wonder if that turned out wonderfully for them or not.
I know, right?
That's going off on a whole side topic. We're not going to go there. Kurt, what are your experiences with setting up an agreement like that in advance of a project?
We have not, and in working with the universities overall, we've been in good shape. We've had one where a university, the PI called me and said, Kurt, this is really embarrassing, but our university is asking for three, to do an RFP and to get 3 bids, or to do a sole source. And I said, let me write up the documents. And so I essentially put our capability package together, how many contracts we've had and how long we've been doing this and everything. And their contracting officer accepted it. So we've had to do the sole source once. One time we have one customer that will put in Stuck & Associates LLC or equivalent into the proposal. And that's a little scary, but we've gotten it every time. We have had a couple of larger contracts that have actually paid for our time up front, that they contacted us and said, we need you to help write the evaluation plan, and we have X number of dollars for you to contribute your time. But those were big centered, like 6-year, $36 million proposals. The grants were going to be that big. Most of the time, the vast majority were writing them for free. We've had a couple of times where there's been a planning grant, so like a noise planning grant or an LSAT planning grant, and we're written into that. And so our time during that planning grant has been paid for. And that's happened a couple of times too. But the vast majority, we just build it into our cost. It's a pro bono to write the evaluation plan. Now, we have a very template kind of evaluation plan, so it doesn't take many hours to write it because we are in the majority of our contracts in a very specific area. So we can reuse proposals over and over. Logic models and evaluation plans obviously change with each one, but some of the narrative part is pretty much the same. But no, we've not done an MOU for any of our pre-planning kind of things. A couple contracts.
We're very different. We have very different evaluation plans that we write, and we contribute sometimes 15, 20 hours of work into writing them because there's meetings with the client. Sometimes you're actually helping them write the grant because you have to clarify some of their grant in order to write your plan. And we did have one occasion where a state department contracted or asked us to write an evaluation plan, and they could not sign that kind of agreement. They paid us for our time. They let out a bid. Somebody else won it after they used our plan, but somebody else actually won the work. So. But
you got paid. So that brings up the conversation. When do you ask for payment for developing an evaluation or evaluation plus program development? What is that point where you say, okay, it's no longer routine. This is now another level? That's my question to.
Well, surely if somebody says that they cannot sole source, and that we would have to respond to an RFP if this is funded, then we would want to charge for our time, because of the experience I had before, where they won the grant, our plan was in there, and then they hired somebody else.
And I have actually not thought of asking that question during some of these early meetings. And I think that that's a really great question then for people to ask is, do you have the capability to say that if you are awarded the grant that we would be the evaluators, or is there a process that the university uses? Or we've only worked with universities, so it might be different with nonprofits or other entities, but I never thought of asking that question. So I think that's a really good one to ask up front, and then that will help shape some of these decisions in later conversations. So that's great advice.
Yeah, that sounds like a good practice to implement along with this MOU.
We have not asked for payment, but the amount of work we put into it is going to be based on whether they're paying or not. So like in one of our planning grants, we ended up doing a full-blown needs analysis. We lost money on it because it was a small amount of money that was in the planning grant for us, but we're in the second round of the application for the full grant. So we'll get paid back through the grant. And this is a university we've worked with before, so we're sure they won't do the switching on us kind of thing.
So
No,
Lauren,
to Lauren's point about putting your name in the proposal, my experience is, I call it the bait and switch. Once somebody has a grant, you could work with that program officer to like totally change the grant. You could change the research questions, you could change whatever once you've got that grant award, because they don't want to give the money back. And so they could very easily say, well, we decided on another evaluator, and so we want to erase your firm and put in somebody else's.
That's a great point. Now, because that's never happened to me, where it was awarded. I had some situations where I had to give that. I had to explain to my principal investigator, or really it was the principal investigator's supervisor, that you wrote me into this. I've contributed a lot of time. I should be written in, and they always agreed. But they, I had to have that conversation, and explain why they were going to contract with me, and I had to point them back to all the things that were put into the proposal. But it's an interesting thing to think that a PI would bait and switch you, because that's never happened, but I guess it's a possibility.
No. I just
that's a possibility that somebody can try and do that. And you said, Melanie, that you built into your contract the one situation where a client did decide to pay you out for your time, because you built that into a pre-agreement, and then they gave it to some graduate students to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
That's
and in these big grants, like Kurt, you might work on these long, large grants. PIs can come and go too, especially within universities. We're on the 8-year of a 10-year grant, and it's already third PI. And they might, in our work with the Girl Scouts, and we talked before, we had 17 years of working with Girl Scouts of the USA. Well, by those 17 years, all of those people turned over. New people came in, and they had their own evaluation firms. So they went with other evaluators. So having it in writing is always a good idea, I think.
I know I had an experience, and this was where I really initiated my MOUs and my approach, where an individual reached out to me from a university and said, we'd like to work with you. We've heard about you. You've got a good reputation. Would you help us develop an evaluation plan? So I took this exchange by email with this individual, and I took they shared the project objectives in their early version of their proposal, and I developed out an evaluation plan, and I sent it to them, and they go, oh, I'm sorry, we decided to go with a different evaluator. And it was like, how did I miss this? Which was, at that point, I said, well, I need some level of commitment on the part of this institution, and that's where I started using MOUs. And Melanie, I have also used your provision of saying something like, it took me perhaps one day, and my per diem per day is this amount to put together this proposal evaluation section. So if you choose to go in a different direction, you'll pay me that amount. And that has been a successful approach for me.
Did it ever happen to you, Matt?
So the one time that I had that issue, I didn't have the MOU in place. So no, but I did have a situation where I went through the trouble of writing a successful evaluation section that was, a part of a successful proposal. And the program officer, not my client, the program officer insisted that it go out for a bid. And this is why I always tell people, be careful about RFPs for evaluation. Make sure you understand who you're responding to, because in this situation, and this happens a lot more than we know, the proposal for the RFP went out for an evaluator, but it was like outlined where it was going to be me, right? And if you read carefully and you knew who my clients were, they wanted to give it to me because that was the original setup, and they were just satisfying a contractual agreement with their program officer. And so I think, Kurt, you have a reference for this. It's like a winner and two losers or something like that.
Right. When somebody goes out for 3 bids, they know who they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like they've got that company and they need 2 losers. Learned that one on the federal contracting side, but then also once I was on the other side, I was on the contracting side. Yep.
That's a whole other conversation, is how do you sniff those out?
Right.
Yeah, it's an art to teasing out which ones are legitimate opportunities and others that are kind of under the table sole source projects that just have to go out for contractual reasons. All right, well, we're right about at the end of this conversation. Let's go around again. Lauren, did you want to share any kind of big thoughts or ideas that you had from this conversation, or anything that you think you'd like to share? And again, maybe something that can be part of our conversation that we'll have on Thursday.
I just appreciate the perspectives of those of you who've been doing this longer, and coming up with an MOU, I think, is definitely going to be one of our next steps to make sure that just that everyone's on the same page. And I'd rather be proactive than reactive, so I think that's a good way to be proactive and making sure that you're doing this work, that it's going to be compensated at some point. And I've definitely just learned about some questions to ask in those initial interviews and things like that. So I really just appreciate it perspectives today, and thank you all for the conversation.
Melanie, would you like to give kind of some final thoughts to our conversation today?
Well, I guess my final piece of advice is don't assume anything.
Mm-hmm.
That don't assume that it's going to be the person that actually does the grant is the person who you're working with. Don't assume that just because you wrote the proposal that they're going to hire you. Just kind of watch out for yourself. In the competitive world, people come out of the woodwork.
Kurt, would you like to provide some final thoughts?
For me, it's almost an ethics issue. If you've written the proposal and they get the grant and they go, oh, sorry, thank you for your time, we're going to go this way. It's almost like they stole your work. And giving the company that's receiving it is almost has an ethical issue of going, we're now adopting maybe proprietary secrets, proprietary information from another company. This is their competitive advantage, and we're benefiting from it. There's ethics in there. And so that whole part of switching really does seem to be an ethics issue at times.
Well, I'll provide some final thoughts too, and I'm sure after we're done with this and we're in the live session on Thursday, I'll have some more ideas, because I'm already thinking about some things I'd like to cover again from the MOU session. But I will say, Melanie, you brought up a really good point about MOUs with new partners. I've worked with people for many years, just as you have, and I know I can trust that if they call me up, we're going to put something together, and if it gets funded, it's going to go just fine. And if it doesn't, if they were to go back on that, that would be kind of breaking a level of trust within our community of partners. And so breaking trust with me is a bigger break of trust with a lot of other people in collaboration within our community of people that we work with on a regular basis. So that just would be poor form, and it would probably result in worse things for them down the road than just breaking a contract with me. So I think that you make a good point in saying we need to set up an MOU with people we don't know as we're developing a relationship, but generally down the road, you probably don't need that. So with that, I'm going to thank everybody for their participation today. And for those of you in our live session, we will start a chat right now.